Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Salon at Centaur Theatre, our online conversation series that we're using in the pandemic period to keep in touch with you all. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Micheline Chevrier, the artistic director of Imago Theatre here in Montreal, and a dear friend who I sometimes blame her for bringing me to Montreal. How are you, Mish?
I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm all right.
It's such a weird question. Usually it's so banal to ask that question, but in these days, it's a sincerely meaningful moment when we check in with each other, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I've had that conversation with everybody I've spoken to. I think it really does depend on the day. It depends on the week. It depends on the moment. Generally, of course, I'm one of the very, very lucky ones. I have a good home and I have some financial stability. I'm healthy, which is really great, knock on wood. But I have to say that, and then we've talked about this before, Ida, that I think the overriding emotion has been sadness, mostly because of, as an artist who works in the live arts, it's been a very conflicted, confusing, sad time. I've been making theater for 40 years, and the thought of not being able to make it for an indefinite period of time is hitting me harder than I thought. And so there's been periods of mourning, and then again periods of thinking, well, let's take stock. Let's actually use this time to reflect and realize what we practice. So it's been a very bumpy, but altogether okay road.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully put, because I think this notion of taking the time to take stock is got to be the gift that we take away from this, for sure, because there's so much to take stock of as the time goes along. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But I want to start by just, I mean, it's so thrilling to me, the history you have with Centaur and the kinds of plays actually that you've done over that history. It's quite an amazing list. And we have a few images here. Let's start with the first one. This is from Doubt. Is that correct?
That's it. This is Patrick Shanley's play, Doubt. Very, very famous play. Beautiful piece, really, really thought through. And this is Lucinda Davis, who played the role of the mother of the young boy in the story. It was our first time working together, and certainly not our last. So it was a very memorable encounter.
She's an amazing actress here in Montreal. And I would have loved to have seen her in that play. It's such a powerful conversation.
Yeah.
And there she is again. Look at that. So what is this? Tell us a little bit about that show.
This is Intimate Apparel by Lynn Nottage, an amazing play, again, that chronicles the life of a young Black seamstress at the turn of the 20th century in New York City, who is actually in love with a rabbi. Not a rabbi, no, an Orthodox Jewish man.
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. And ends up marrying this man from away. And long story, but it's a beautiful account of her resilience, her ability to survive, her artistry, and a little bit of an unknown history about these young Black seamstresses, very, very talented, who would make intimate apparel mostly for sex workers.
Wow.
And also women on Fifth Avenue, but also for sex and cabaret performers and all of that. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's an early play by Lynn Nottage. Is that right? Was it her first play? I think was it her first?
I don't know if it's her. That's a good question. I don't know if it's her first play, but early play for sure.
Yeah. She's such a powerhouse of American theater now.
Yeah, she is.
And it's so exciting. What year was that? Do you know? I know that's like a pop question.
It was, I think it was early, like 2012, 2011, something like that.
That's amazing. It's wonderful. And then, so those are shows that you actually were brought in to direct, but then you became the artistic director at Imago, and you started a series of amazing works that you brought to Centaur Theatre through the auspices of Imago. Yeah. And can we just talk a little bit about those?
Sure.
What's this?
This is Thinking of You. This is this is quite a few years back, but we came in a play by Carole Fréchette, who's an incredible
I've lost her.
Québécois artist. Don't know if you can hear me. Anyway, so she's an amazing an amazing Québécois artist. She's been translated by John Morel. This play was about a woman who was trying to teach French or English in our case to a young Asian woman who had just arrived in Montreal. And it brought up conversations around Tiananmen Square. It brought up conversations around Asian identity and also freedom and privilege and how we take freedom for granted here in this part of the world. It was a beautiful play. Yeah.
Amazing. And then what's next? What do we have next? We have a beautiful cache. Oh, this is a gorgeous production of Pig Girl. Is that correct?
Yes, by Colleen Murphy, which chronicled or looked at what happened out in BC with Robert Picton and the horrendous murders around all these women who were mostly sex workers and drug addicts. So very much the forgotten, the pushed aside, the ignored, and also the kind of criminal behavior of the Vancouver police in how they really didn't address the problem head on and therefore caused further deaths. But beautifully embodied in this woman who happens to be Indigenous, but played by Renalta Arlick with such force. This woman who just refuses to die, but fights the entire way. So it was Colleen's tribute to the voices that were not heard. A lot of them didn't get their day in court of the women who were killed or disappeared. But it was a beautiful piece, very hard. But I will just say on this play before we move on that it was the first play we decided to, as Imago Theatre, to put in our policy of pay what you decide. So every performance, people could pay whatever they decided. It didn't matter, 5 cents to whatever they wanted to do. And it brought in a really new, interesting demographic, including the Indigenous community. And we knew they had never come to the theater because they would come in, they didn't know where to go. They said, where's the theater? It was so exciting to see people crossing the Centaur doors for the first time, thanks to this piece, because there was a lot of curiosity around this piece, and also to the pay what you decide policy, which we still have till this day.
That's amazing. I think that's a really important thing that we're going to be looking at going forward. Yeah. This is, what is this play? Is this Intractable Woman?
It is Intractable Woman, which is about the life of Anna Politkovskaya, who was this Russian journalist who reported on the Chechen conflict. And Stefano Massini, an Italian playwright, did an adaptation based on all her essays and her writings for the newspaper. She was murdered by either the Chechen or the Russian government. It's really hard to know, but they tried to murder her 4 times. The 4th time it worked outside of her apartment. And she never took a side, but she was a true journalist, really trying to understand the impact of this conflict on everyday people, the citizens themselves, especially in Chechnya. It was beautiful. And Paula Wing, who's a Canadian playwright, did the translation. It was a great piece. Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, it seems really clear to me, your interest, I've known you a long time, but your interest in the untold story, the mistold story, the under-considered story has always been part of what you as an artist pursue, isn't it?
It's, well, I think one of the greatest injustices for me is the silencing of someone or a community or a people. Because if you can't express yourself, it's a way we exist. We exist through our own stories, our own identities, and they are expressed often in some kind of public platform. It doesn't have to be a big platform. So at Imago, that's what I brought. I brought the idea that the unsilencing of these stories, so things we don't get to hear about or not aware of, and the people also that we tend to, as a society, want to ignore or don't think they have, because they don't often vote or they don't have a lot of power. So governments tend to overlook them. So
or theaters do, as you pointed out, by changing your policy of how you pay for things, you get new people into the building, which is really important. Yeah. And then this is the third, this beautiful show. This one I actually got to see because it was when I was here, which is Other People's Children by Hannah Moskowitz. That was a really great play. It was the first time she was done in Montreal. Is that, if I'm not mistaken, is that true?
I think that's true. It's kind of remarkable, really, given her incredible success and skill as a playwright. This one was particularly interesting to us because she was addressing very much from the white perspective, the privileged perspective, nannies that come from away. And so in this case, it was a Sri Lankan nanny, and how we don't consider how this whole part of the world enters our own, and what happens when that collision.
And what's the cost of it to
absolutely
everybody?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Hannah does so beautifully. There's a little tidbit that we'll drop today, is that if we had had a season next year, we were going to be doing Hannah Moskowitz's new play at Centaur, Sexual Misconduct in the Middle Classes, and we will do it. It's whenever we can do a play again.
That's right.
Which I'll get to direct that one. I'm really looking forward to it. And I will be calling you to talk about Hannah's work for sure.
Yeah, she's great. She's really great.
She's a wonderful writer. So then we're going to go into looking at some of the things. You not only do you direct shows through Imago, one of the things that I was so wowed by when I got here was the incredible mentorship you provide to this community, to the women in this community. And so the next little series of things has to do with that. And what's our next image that we have to look at?
Tropic of X, I think.
Did we lose? Oh, there you are. You're back. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, here we are.
This is Tropic of X. The Tropic of X is written by a Latino-American playwright, Caridad Svich, who also has Serbian heritage, but she is too very much interested in writing about people who are often ignored, and this takes place in a unnamed Latin American country, with all the problems that those countries face. Tourism that is disregarding the welfare of people who live there for the benefit of the government, or fascist governments, the rise and fall of whoever is running the country, a lot of instability. And in this case, I asked Sophie G, who is a beautiful, sensitive, smart, inventive young director, emerging director in Montreal, and who's working more and more, I'm happy to say. And I decided to trust her with this piece, and I didn't make a mistake.
No, it was a great show.
Beautiful sense of aesthetic and scope, and it was a really challenging.
Io Sharp's set and Sonoyo Nishikawa's lighting together, they kind of found each other in that show. It was beautiful.
Sure did. It was gorgeous. Yeah. It was really great.
Terrific. So what's this?
This is Alex Hebert. Centaur has presented Alex's work several times, and this was a play that she wrote in response to the freeing, or the deal that was made with Karla Homolka. And she just really felt very strongly that this woman would get to be free and have children and move on. And so she wrote a play based on that, inspired by that, about this young woman who is freed and ends up living, because she was going to be living in Quebec. She didn't live there. She didn't live here long. And so Alex wanted to deal with the impact of that. And so this young woman whose mother was killed by a serial killer ends up confronting this young woman. And so again, same thing, kind of a story about the ripple effects of decisions that are made even far away from us, but they're very close to us. And Alex wanted to write about that.
Yes, she's a wonderful writer, and you've been mentoring her writing for a long time, which was such a beautiful advantage when we did Alice in the World We Live in this year, earlier in the season. Yeah. You were such a great dramaturg and just guide through.
Yeah, we trust each other, and I think it's been a very good relationship with Alex. I've directed some of her work and dramaturged some of her work, and it's a really good, strong, trusting relationship.
It's fantastic. Here we have her side of the story. So tell us about this. This was a kind of a play series, right?
Yeah, it was a festival of 4 plays that pretty much we featured plays that reinvented reshifted the perspective. So for example, Kate Hennig's The Last Wife, which is what we see now, we get as Centaur presented it. So it really is about giving the woman's perspective on a historical time that people know but may not understand completely the whole story. So it's about filling certain aspects of the story, but also getting a playwright like Kate Hennig to reimagine or imagine some of the debates or conversations that could have taken place. So we had 4 plays. One of them was Margaret Atwood's The Penelopiad. And so, of course, a different lens, of course, on the Odysseus story. So yeah, it was great. And in this case, again, we gave, I gave all the plays, they were staged readings. Everybody got a few days to rehearse. The actors are always so amazing in these situations.
I know.
They blow my mind. But the 4 directors were 4 young female emerging directors from Montreal, including Tamara Brown, Sophie G, Christina Culiandro, and Jen, who were all working with everybody. So it was great.
It was a terrific festival, and it was full. You brought people. It was a really very, very popular event.
Yeah,
that was what was so cool. It wasn't just like we were doing something good. We were doing something that people wanted to see.
I know. It was good.
Which was
great.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
And then we get into Brave New Looks, which is part of the Centaur, something that Roy started, which I'm so grateful to inherit, was this project to bring productions that have already started to happen and give them another platform and get them seen by more people. And you brought If We Are Birds.
Yeah,
If We Were Birds.
If We Were Birds by Erin Shields, who's now living in Montreal. She's an amazing playwright, and you produced her last year. That was her first play, from what I understand. That was really, really
I remember seeing it in Toronto, actually. Yeah.
And Dina Aziz, who's a Montreal-based actor, had seen it in Toronto and said to me, "You who love ancient Greek tragedy, you have to read this play and make this play happen." And so we did. And again, same thing about Erin wrote it in response to her discovering that the culture of rape in war is prevalent. We all know that. But the thing that shocked her was that it wasn't really considered a war crime literally until 2008. And so, because I think even when she started to write it, it was still being debated. And so she used different situations, different conflicts from the 20th century, and then through the lens of a Greek myth, and the Greek myth that actually Shakespeare has used, some of this idea that Procne and Philomela, 2 sisters, and Tereus, who marries Procne, ends up raping and then cutting the tongue off her sister. And finally, the 2 sisters find out, and the very, very gory ending of Procne cooking up her own son to serve it to her husband as revenge. And at the end, they all become birds, which is called If We Were Birds. But again, this play dealt with silencing. It was about women all over the world who are the victims of incredible cruelty, such as Philomela. And so how do we speak about that? How do we make that known so that we are aware and we put pressures on governments? And this is not just for war or whatever, but anything that needs to be exposed, so that we can all as a society say, this is not acceptable.
Yes. And that's interesting because this takes us to the Brave New Looks that was going to happen for next season. And it's the opposite of silencing, which was so excited about. We had the other little tidbit to drop into this is that we were preparing to premiere the English language Anishinaabe production of Okie Nome by the amazing playwright and artist Emily Monet. And that was going to be through Imago Theatre, bringing that for our Brave New Looks series next year. So tell us a little bit, first of all, about Okie Nome.
Okie Nome is a production of Onishka, the theater company Onishka, which is led by Emily Monet. And this was her first play. So Émilie is trained as an actor, and she decided to finally put pen to paper to talk about her own life. And part of it was exactly her relationship to her own language, and that she had never really learned. And so she's perfectly fluent in both French and English, but she wanted to actually learn her Indigenous language. And this was at the same time that she was diagnosed with throat cancer. And so there was an interesting parallel about her voice being thwarted by the cancer, and her voice being thwarted by her not knowing her own language, actually. So it was really it's very, very moving, and also all of this, which is my favorite part of the show, is that it is about her I don't know how you would say it, but it's about the beaver, and the beaver being a very important animal in her own tradition. And so it's all woven in. All of these stories are woven through, beautifully, beautifully done, and it's Émilie's kind of coming into her own as a part French, part Indigenous artist, and how she marries those cultures and how she lives with that marriage.
Yes, and finds that full voice, which I think is
absolutely
so exciting. I'm looking forward to when we can bring it back. We will,
yes.
And it will be part of the future for sure. No question about that.
Yes, indeed.
So now this pandemic, as we've just kind of demonstrated, has had such a crazy impact on everybody. What is the impact of it been on Imago for you? What are you guys going through as a company?
One of the greatest things about running a very small company, there are some challenges, but one of the great things is that everybody who works at the theater, in the office, everybody's an artist. And so we're lucky because the staff itself, we're all theater makers. And so we're either directors, some of us are writers, performers, lighting designers, graphic illustrators. And so we're able to, as a team, as a collective, we're able to continue to produce and do all the things that need to get done in the running of a company, such as communications, administration, outreach, but blend it with our own practices. So for us, what's good is that next year, everybody's job is secure. Just because we can make a lot of the work, we can contribute to a lot of the work. The impact, of course, is that we have no idea, like every one of us. So we have. I think now we're on Plan D. Yeah, I think we're on Plan D.
I'm already on R.
I know. So and I think right now what we're trying to create is the plan where when we can we return in January? I mean, I can't believe I'm hearing rumors of a vaccine in the fall. I don't believe it, but I heard it. Do we return to social distancing and finding ways to still perform and gather, but in a very and when can we return to full-on gathering? The irony for us is that the two shows we actually program next year were specifically designed for intimacy. So for the first time ever. And so we can't really do the shows we have programmed, even with social distancing, because the actors themselves cannot social distance. And the intimacy with the audience, to be so close, like a foot, was so important. And so Okie Nome is one of them that we want to wait till we can actually give the full experience to the audience. So we have other things in mind that we're playing with, but again, it's a bit frustrating to be asked to create very quickly and think of things very quickly. That especially using tools that most of us don't really understand. So we're now, of course, collaborating with video makers and filmmakers and audio engineers and all of that, so that we can find different platforms to sustain. What I like to say is that what we want to do is sustain the conversation through the art of theater in some form. So whether we invite schools to read plays and then we can discuss it with them instead of them coming to see them. If we can continue for artists to interact, as you're doing right now, with audiences to discuss what the impact of this is. I don't think people quite understand the full impact that it has on the live arts and on the live artists, which is what we're concerned with.
I think that's what the letter that was put out from both communities to the government was all about, was in fact that very, very terror that we all feel, that there is no real understanding of what it takes to put theater in front of people and how to pay for it. And so.
Also, like, it's basically saying that actors and directors and, designers and technicians and have been suddenly laid off with no real net, and certainly there are grant programs, but they're in place for 4 months. And so there's a lot of uncertainty and concern. So I guess as Imago, like you, we're trying to figure out how we can give something to freelance artists through this coming season. How can we sustain, do our bit to help them sustain and engage them.
Yes, we'll be putting out, at the end of the month, I'll be announcing some of the things we're planning to do in that very frame of how we keep art happening, keep artists being artists, and yet maintain the necessary safety, so that we are not putting anyone at risk.
Well, we're auditioning in a park next week, so
oh, good. Can I audition?
So I think it's, and I think what's been very important for us to, I think, communicate is that watching a reading online or a play online is not theater. Theater definitely is completely reliant on the energy of the other in the same room. It's very much a community engagement, and so with the actors. And so we have to be careful how we frame and educate people.
It's interesting you say that, because I think it's probably the right segue for me to talk about the moment that we're in relation to Black Lives Matter and the incredible revolution that we're experiencing. And if you wouldn't mind, Mish, I'd like to take this opportunity to actually read our statement. We haven't put a statement out from Centaur yet, because I wanted to, it's too important to listen to everyone, particularly from the Black community and from our colleagues in the Black community in theater, and to really take a moment to take stock and to make a statement that is truthful, authentic, and that I believe I will be able to stand behind and take forward. So I'm going to read it so that I can make sure that it's exactly what I mean to say. August Wilson said, "A community is self." The uprising in the United States, in reaction to the most recent egregious acts of violence in an immense history of acts of violence against Black people, has made us all face a collective reality and a reckoning with a worldwide system of repression and violence that is embedded in our governments, justice systems, and institutions. If we believe that theater can serve a vital role in creating a healthy, democratic, and progressive community, then we must take Mr. Wilson's words deeply to heart. We stand in solidarity with everyone who is demanding that the future must look different than the past. When we open our doors again at Centaur Theater, we are committed to being an agent of change. Our actions today must echo for generations to come. So that is from all of us at Centaur Theater, and it's inspired the work that Misha's done, as you can see from the amazing play titles and images we've presented today. This is work that has it's not starting now, but it must go forward, and we all must take it up. We all must take our place in the struggle to change the way the world is set up, and the way, especially there's Indigenous people, Black people, Asian, the entire community of people who are marginalized and face a different relationship to the world than those of us that don't walk around in a different colored skin. And I'm moved and impressed by my colleagues across the country. Today at Stratford, they have Black Like Me. Their YouTube event was incredible. These artists speaking about their experience with honesty, humanity, and passion. I encourage everyone to check it out. It's on YouTube at the Stratford Festival website. And if you want to donate for this cause, the Quebec Drama Federation has put together a really comprehensive list of organizations where you can make a donation, you can find out more information, and you can become an ally. So in that, I just want to finish with you, Mish. This is the kind of work that you've always done. This is where you, as an artist, come from, and it's inspiring to me. And I find that where does it start for you?
Well, I think that's the luck that I've had, is that I've worked with artists from a variety of experiences and backgrounds, and it's because of them that that I'm inspired constantly to look for something else, to look further, to keep digging, and also that life is not meant to be easy. Never is, and it's not going to be, but it is certainly rich when you do dig deeper and you expose yourself to that. So I gain so much from my collaboration with everyone that I've been really, really fortunate to work with, and like the artists in Stratford today, who've had such generosity in sharing their stories and broadening the view of the world that I have.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we will leave it today. Thank you so much, Mish, for joining us.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure, Ida. We always have such great chats.
We do. And when we didn't even rag on anything.
We were very good.
Yes. I'm so grateful. This is our last online salon for this season, but we'll start up again in the fall, and there'll be lots more to talk about. So thank you. Thank you to the entire wonderful staff at Centaur who's turned themselves around in 10 seconds flat to make us into, we can put these things online, we can do pictures, we can do it's like amazing how they just whipped it up and made it happen. I said, we should do some chats. And they're like, okay. So Vanessa Rigo and Edouard Savoie and Kathleen, before she was on to her summer vacation, especially, they all really made it happen. So I want to thank them very much. And that's it. We will see you. I'm going to come and audition. I don't even know what the play is, but I'm just going to
I'll send you the
show
info.
up. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.